Welcome. Thanks for taking the time to be here. Today's workplace includes people from many different backgrounds and lived experiences. When we recognize and value differences in cultures, beliefs, values, and how people show up at work, we get better ideas, stronger collaboration, and a healthier culture, one where everyone can contribute and succeed.
When we respect what each person brings to work, everyone benefits. People feel accepted, job satisfaction rises, and morale improves. That's why creating a fair, inclusive workplace matters. What does that look like day to day? And how can each of us help build it?
Many of us may already know the basics of difference, fairness, and belonging. This course gives everyone a clear, shared understanding of why these qualities matter at work.
The United States is changing, and our workplaces are changing with it. Teams are more diverse in race, ethnicity, language, culture, age, gender identity, disability, and lived experience. In a 2019 Pew Research Center survey, 75% of people said it matters for companies to promote racial and ethnic diversity at work. Many employers also say they're investing in a more diverse workforce. So what does that commitment look like in practice?
Working with people who have different perspectives helps us learn, challenge assumptions, and make better decisions. This means bringing together people with different identities and lived experiences, including age, race, ethnicity, gender identity, disability, sexual orientation, religion, and socioeconomic background. Workplaces still do not reflect the diversity of the country, especially in leadership, where women and people from historically marginalized racial and ethnic groups are underrepresented. These gaps are shaped by inequities tied to race and socioeconomic status that affect who gets access, opportunity, and advancement.
Some companies blame a pipeline problem, claiming there are not enough qualified women and people from historically marginalized racial and ethnic groups. For example, a former Wells Fargo CEO once pointed to a limited pool of black talent. Statements like this overlook the real drivers of underrepresentation: bias and social conditioning, unequal access to education and opportunity, and recruiting from the same narrow networks, and hiring or promoting based on relationships over skills. Historic policies and practices also play a role, which we'll cover next.
Some companies hire a small number of people from underrepresented groups to signal diversity without building any real sense of belonging. When you are one of the few, it can feel like tokenism. That often leads to isolation, especially when someone is expected to speak for an entire identity or be the expert on it. Let's look at an example.
Amaya is African American. She joined a few coworkers and her manager for trivia night at a local restaurant. They coasted through the questions and were leading the other teams. In the final round, the MC asked, "How many candles were traditionally used in the celebration of Kwanzaa?" The team went quiet. Amaya's coworkers looked at her for the answer. Amaya's family doesn't celebrate Kwanzaa. She had no idea what the answer was. The team got the question wrong, and they lost. Her manager joked that she should have known the answer. This is an example of a stereotype, which are overgeneralizations about groups.
Tokenism leads to higher turnover and makes it harder to attract diverse candidates once people hear about the culture. Turnover is costly, recruiting and onboarding take time and money, productivity drops when roles stay open, and morale suffers when others have to carry extra work.
While it's true that increasing diversity in the workplace is essential, this shouldn't be the only goal. In fact, focusing on representation without acknowledging the importance of fairness and belonging can make any corporate diversity effort ring hollow. Fairness can be misunderstood as meaning equal, but they aren't the same. Equality is the belief that everyone has the same opportunities. Fairness, however, ensures that everyone has equal access to resources.
United States laws and institutions have long contributed to the subjugation of certain groups such as women, immigrants, and racial and ethnic minorities. For example, after women gained the right to vote in 1920 through the 19th Amendment, many black women still face state barriers designed to keep them from the polls. Literacy tests, poll taxes, and similar tactics also blocked many black men from voting despite the 15th Amendment. Wider federal protections came with the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
United States housing history shows how federal policy and institutional practices created inequity. After World War II, many veterans used benefits like low-interest mortgages and education support. Many Black veterans and also Jewish families were blocked from buying in certain neighborhoods because of discriminatory housing agreements. At the same time, the Homeowners Loan Corporation created redlining, marking neighborhoods with higher concentrations of minority residents as higher risk on residential security maps. Those maps influenced lending decisions, and the Federal Housing Administration often denied loans in these areas. The result was that many families were pushed into renting or confined to segregated neighborhoods. Renting rarely builds home equity, which is one of the main ways families build wealth and pay for things like a child's college education.
The Fair Housing Act of 1968 outlawed many forms of housing discrimination, and discrimination still shows up. In 2021, there were 31,216 fair housing complaints, the highest number NFHA had recorded at that time. Most complaints were handled by private fair housing organizations, about 72.6%, followed by FAP agencies 20.5%, HUD 6.7%, and DOD 0.12%. Disability was the most common basis for complaints, with race second. Home ownership matters because it is one of the main ways families build assets over time and pass them down. When discrimination limits access to housing and lending, it limits access to opportunity and wealth building through no fault of the people affected.